All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am back. I know some of you guys saw me at the 7 Eastern time. Apparently, people live in different time zones, and some people need to be made aware of said things. Normally, me, because I just assume that everything is on the West Coast, East Coast, because that's where I live. And I've always lived in the East Coast, so I have no tolerance for anybody who lives in the West Coast. So it's my bad. It's my bad. But we've got everything going together. Cole's here. That's great. Cole's here. I've got Brian Lambert here. I think that's how you say his last name. We're going to be talking about Wingless Comics. I've got a whole bunch of questions to ask him about a whole bunch of stuff going in California, but let's bring him on. Hey, Brian, how are you, man?
What's going on, Travis? I'm glad we could actually link up the correct time zones this time.
Right. It's my bad. I have a horrible habit of doing it, of just assuming everybody has compensated for me. And then the other thing is, I knew that you were from Full Sail because that was one thing, and Full Sail's in Orlando place.
Yeah.
That's where I went to school from, so I just naturally assumed. But there could be a Full Sail in California. Is there? I don't know.
No, I actually did it online, man, which is probably the only way I would ever make it through school, to be honest with you. Like, I couldn't sit in the class again. So I did it all online, which was great for me, man.
Nice. Yeah. When I came to Florida, that was my original goal, was to go to Full Sail. Yeah. They informed me all the details of why I can't afford that, so it didn't end up happening. But it was the intention.
They informed me as well, and I did the I don't know, I guess we're going to call it a gamble at this point, and the student loan gamble. And, 75, 80K later,
right?
This is where we are.
That was, see, here's the thing. I'm in my 40s. How old are you?
I just turned 40.
Okay. So, like, if I was coming into it now with, like, the wrestling stuff, like, I'd be all in. Like, 80 grand is nothing for that exposure, right? Like, I had to write a wrestling show? Hell's yeah.
Yeah. You know what? So, the plus and the minus of that, though, is you have to get that contract or, honestly, that job after the fact, as opposed to like the coursework. So don't get me wrong. I still talk to some of my professors. The coursework itself is great. I actually wouldn't be in comics without it. Roland Mann, who you may or may not know,
I know Roland Mann, of course.
Yeah. So he was one of my professors, and he's actually the one who did the comic unit, and blah 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 blah, on and on and on. So it's great, right? But at the same time, I was pumped. I was like, I'm gonna write an episode for NXT in this program, and it didn't happen in the program. You know what I mean? They do have a lot of openings for WWF and WWE and all that, whatever. If you're on the East Coast, so that's actually pretty cool. But I didn't get to parlay that, as it were.
Yeah, so I'm originally from New Hampshire, and I came down to Florida to go to there. I didn't go, and I went to another film school. But I mean, I had a passion for film. So if anybody was doing a film, I hung out with all the Full Sail kids because I had a passion for film. I wanted to make films, so I was making films with them. They were making films with me. But my program was way lamer than them, and they had better equipment. So
they do have their facilities, and even the obviously doing it online and cross country. Just the equipment that they give you is state of the art stuff. You know what I mean? And they really do. Don't get me wrong, you end up paying for it, so it's not like it's free.
Right, exactly. The cost outweighs it.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about your new Kickstarter. I also want to talk about the Black Comic Day that just happened. I saw that you were part of that. That was really, really cool. Can you tell me about that? Like what that was like, what that event was? It looked really awesome, and you got Greg out there. You got all sorts of really cool people.
Yeah, so Black Comics Day has been going on. This would be the 4th year, right? Because they obviously skipped last year with COVID protocols and everything, right? So this is the 4th year that it's happened. Heroes Rise 4. It's put together by Keith and Jones and a lady, Makita Cheatham. And Makita owns the World Beat Center, which is where it's held. And Keithan actually does the logistics of putting it together. If you don't know Keithan Jones, he's an amazing creator himself, an artist. Owner of Kid Comics. He has a comic called The Power Knights. He's been in the industry for a bunch of years. Really great guy. And it's really one of those things that you have to be there to understand the gravity of it, kind of. Smaller cons always get looked at as like smaller cons, but you know the difference between like a small con where you're connecting with everybody and like a legit small con. this is a small con where it's like family coming back together. I was fortunate enough to write the foreword for the the booklet for the con itself, and in there I mentioned it's like that family reunion or that cookout, right, where you go and like everybody, like you're looking forward to it the whole year. Because with all of us doing comics and being everywhere, across the United States, it's hard for us to all get together. You have a couple different, you're going to see a lot of people if you go to Emerald City. You're going to see a lot of people if you go to C2E2. You're going to see a lot of people if you go to New York. But other than that, and those sometimes are expensive and really hard to get to, it's hard for us to all of, to be in a big group, 20, 30 people that all know each other and all doing comics. So that's one part of it that's great. The other part of it is having done big cons and having done, again, smaller cons. LA Comic Con gets 100,000 people that come through it, right? Like per day. Right. And that's like amazing. But if you to get even 1% of that to actually give a care about your book is super difficult. I know 100,000 people sounds like a ton, but it's really not when you're selling, right? So it's Black Comics Day, like a horror convention or a sci-fi convention is targeted. The people that are coming there want your content. Right. Now, they may not want my specific content, but they want the genre of content they're going to get. And so that's actually really good for your up and coming creators, your brand new creators, people that are trying to, wet their beak in the sales part of all of this. Because again, as well as I do, you might go to a bigger con and you sell, 7 units the first day on preview night or whatever. Right. And then the rest of the time you're kind of playing catch up. So Black Comics Day is just a really, really great thing. It's grassroots, as they say. Right. But again, very, very good traffic, considering I had some really great sales. I met some really great people. Like, I love it. Also, it dovetailed into, like, as you said, I have a Kickstarter live right now. Wingless Comics is live with Constant Hustle Comics for our crossover Nightfall. Nightfall is a 5-part miniseries that we started a year and 3 months ago, technically. So we launched the first issue in the beginning of November. Right. So we're coming to the end. We decided to launch issue 4 and 5 together. We've launched issue 1, 2, 3 separately. We decided to launch issue 4 and 5 together because we really, really just not want to finish, but we want to finish in that we want the story to be fully told, right? And even breaking up issues 4 and 5 in the narrative is great because of page counts and on and on and on. But the reality of it is they are, all of it's all very connected, but issue 4 and 5 are just a rocket ship of chaotic superhero action. So we really, really wanted to get it out there.
Like any end of a event, right? Like the issue before, like, ends on that cliffhanger. You don't want to wait the other year to get issue 5, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is, I guess, I'm just thinking of it now, but it's like the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2. Like, we just didn't wait to release them. You know what I mean? Like, it's all super necessary to kind of be right on top of each other, to keep that energy and that momentum of the story going. Not even, pledges and on and on and on. It's really about the story and getting that out.
Yeah, well, let's take a step back, because there's a couple more questions I had about that. Looks good Starker page. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of my big beefs, I'm going to give you some beef. I'm going to throw some shade, and I apologize. I just have to. Yeah. I want to get 1 through 5, and there is no option on here to do that. Do you know? Are you aware of that, except for digital?
So I am, and that's okay. So
is that intentional?
Yes, and you can get 1 through 5 through the add-ons, right? So I didn't feel like doing an exact tier for it. It felt superfluous as I was writing it up. But obviously, like I said, they're all added. You can get them on the add-ons if you go back in there. I just some of it, right, is the look of it feels greedy to me, right? So the digitals are at cost, basically. $5 per digital or whatever, and that's why the price is there. Right. Now, if I went and added a 1 through 5 tier, I could, right? But I feel like it's, $65, $75 for, you know what I mean? And again, cost, right?
I get you, but I mean, for me, I will tell you this, for me, that's one of the things that why I haven't backed yet is because I was like, oh, I can't get 1, 2, and 3. I might as well wait till this is done and then find them on a website somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe if it's just labeled, hey, 1 and 2 is available on add-ons,
Yeah.
Or even just have a tier for issue 1, because a lot of people just want to try it out, give a taste, I don't know. It's hard, right, to get it all. But I did. Danny's here. Maybe Danny can solve our problem here, Brian, right? Yeah. So one of the things you did do is you had a retail tier of 1 through 5.
Yes.
So this is $120, which is a hell of a steal.
Yeah.
And that gives you 5 issues of everything, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Danny, if you get that, I can then buy them from you.
So look at that. Synergy. Right? That's what we call it, right?
Synergy. And then you would be in that Orlando store near Full Sail right by Full Sail. So this could all connect and get it all together.
Yeah.
So now that Danny said, Danny, I need you to back that retail tier and then sign me up for 1 through 5. I want the whole thing. And let's make this happen.
Yes, do it, Danny. Yes.
Danny runs a great store called The Collective out in Orlando. It's
that's awesome.
Wonderful store.
So I have a brother that actually lives out there. My brother, not a brother.
Link, please. Yeah, he wants the link. That's what I'm talking about.
My brother actually lives in Orlando, so I'm actually going to be out there in April.
Do a signing, man. Like, right. Danny will set you up, won't you, Danny?
I have to link up with him, man. That'd be awesome. That would definitely be awesome.
Yeah, and if you want to come out to my area, I'm like an hour south from there.
Okay.
We have 4 really good comics.
Okay.
4 really good comic stores that I can introduce that are all very indie friendly.
Okay. I'll let you know offline because my brother's getting married, so I'm gonna be there for his wedding and a couple days after, obviously to do some.
Danny says, "Come sign the books." This is happening. So Danny, you need to sign it. I know 4 and 5 need production time, but you can bring in 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. See, we can make this happen. Let's make this all collaborate. We'll stop. We'll collaborate. We'll listen. We'll make this happen.
Nice reference.
So one of the things that I really like. So I want to go back to the Black Comic thing because it does connect. Because I know that you're connected with Constant Hustle, and I want to talk about all that together. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've noticed, at least in the area, because we have a couple Black-only comic cons here in Florida, mostly in the Miami area. They have them a couple of times a year. I always know it when the Second Sight crew is out somewhere, and I'd never heard of it, right? Some random con. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Oh, it's Black SuperCon here in Miami. Oh, cool. So I think it's such an important thing. One, that you guys brought out everybody, and this isn't to throw shade at all. Like even Marcel went out. Like Marcel thought it was important. Marcel had beef with people in the area, but he even knew that this is the place I need to be for the stuff. First off, I think that's really cool to get Marcel to go out to anything, especially with someone who he owes books for. And even if you have beef or not, like the respect of him going out and feeling that it's important to be at the table and to show the strength of the community, nobody who saw that application said he's not welcome.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
So, how do I say this
politically correctly?
There are things that happen in the industry, right? Some of them are publicized, some of them are not. But I think that the greater portion of this is the importance of putting these heroes and putting these different images out there. Yeah. Just like male privilege exists, right? And I will use a specific example. Like as a male, I used to go running at like 10 o'clock at night, right? I used to get off from this job by the airport, and I would just run around the airport. There's a lot of area to run. And I had a friend, obviously a female friend, who was like, I couldn't even dream of doing that. And I didn't understand why at first. And she was like, no, you know how dangerous it is? But I never had to worry about that, right? So when we're telling these stories, I use that analogy because when we're telling some of these stories, you or I might just do a story, right? And we're like, oh, okay, cool. But it might neglect the little girl who wants to do it, right? And not on purpose, but that's just the place we're coming from. Sure. Captain America, the big two, blah, 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 blah. That neglected, anybody of color for a long time. Yeah. And this is not a judgment, and this is not I hate everything. That's not what I'm saying. Like, these are facts of life. These are things that happen. So as we look as this next generation to kind of redress some of this stuff, I think that these are important, and it's important to note. You said something that I would rephrase.
Okay.
Like a Black only con, right? And I know what you mean.
Sure. Yeah.
But the public at large doesn't, because for so long we've had when we relegate things to race, it's always exclusive, right?
Sure.
But something like Black Comics Day and something like some of the cons that you've talked about, like having them in Florida. Now, while they are people of color centered, whatever, I saw one of the comments that, there are a lot of Black and Latino cons in New York. While those cons may be centered around that, they are not exclusionary. It's not like only Black people can go, only Latinos can go. It's just, again, it's like a genre focus. It's like, oh, hey, man, you go to a horror con, you're going to get a bunch of horror comics. There are going to be some other stuff in there too, but it's focused on horror comics. So even though that's a genre and people are not a genre, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm talking about you have the ability to go to a con that focuses, on a certain type of material, and then spreads out everywhere else, which I think is the beautiful part. That's where we really get the mix of everybody coming together.
Well, and I think it's important to acknowledge your community, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like when I'm doing stuff, my instinct when I'm forming a team for stuff, I just had this recently, I'm forming a big project, is I surround myself with a lot of white creators. It just happened. It wasn't that I am racist. It just happened to be that way. It's true. Just acknowledging that and how that works in trying to be inclusive, but also understanding, the benefits of all that stuff and what that looks like, Yeah. I love it that, you guys have that con and can look at it, because I know if I was in that circle or of that nationality, I see a lot of superheroes in the Black community. They create a lot of superheroes. Yeah. I'd be like, all right, so what can I do differently that's not superhero, that's not manga inspired, to kind of break in, but still be part of that group? And I think that's good. And I think it's easy to see when you have them all spread out on a table, right? When everyone has their own universes, you don't really feel it. But when you go table by table, we got a lot of superheroes here. All right. Yeah. And it also speaks to, this was something that was missed in childhood. Like, you have to acknowledge that if there's such a desire, because you'll notice not a lot of, if we're talking about race, not a lot of white creators create superheroes. Yeah. Right? They don't. Yeah. It's because of the same thing. Yeah. We're sick of it. Right? Yeah, right. They're there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it is this weird kind of, I don't know, everything builds on everything else,
right?
And I call it the 4-minute mile, right? Before somebody ran the 4-minute mile, everybody said it was impossible to run one, and then somebody ran one, and then everybody could run one, right? And so there are a lot of things that we, as adults, sometimes take for granted, like, oh, no, of course you can do that. But how do children know that they can do that unless they've actually seen it? And I think I think comics in general do a lot for that, right? Do a lot for creativity, do a lot for the cartoons we grew up on.
Right.
I love Thundercats, right? The old Thundercats looked gorgeous. It was one of the dumbest cartoons ever. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Sure.
But it's like gorgeous, and it expanded our imagination, right? But before we had seen that, we didn't know. But then after that, you see Silverhawks, you see, you know what I mean? And it like I said, it's this thing that kind of feeds on itself, where the more you see, the more we can imagine. And the more you can imagine, the more you can see.
No, I definitely get that. And I hate it. I just bought the, the Voices thing that Marvel's been doing. I don't know if you've seen that, and I was so mad. I even called Marvel out on it. Like, they had Thrasher. Thrasher is one of my favorite heroes from New Warriors. And he's on the cover and not in the book and stuff like that. Like, why are you doing this? You're doing something special. Talk about Voices, put him on the cover and then not in the book. Like, why are you doing that, Marvel? Like, you're drawing attention to yourself, right?
Yeah, you literally didn't give him a voice. Like, you literally popped him up. And we're like, no, you're the one who doesn't get a voice. That's awkward. It's super awkward.
Kurt's hard. Yeah, I was so mad about that. Just because, I mean, he's such an interesting character, and you could just tell the difference. You've got Black Panther. He's just as rich. He doesn't, he's not as rich as Black Panther, but he's rich like Bruce Wayne rich.
Yeah.
But he rides on a skateboard and his armor is like Jack, right?
Right. Yeah. It was so weird because I remember growing up with New Warriors, right? Like in my formative years, quote unquote, or whatever. And seeing like Mr. Terrific. And I remember in my mind thinking like, oh, this is like, I thought that they were going to be, the analogous heroes, Moon Knight, Batman, and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like, oh, he's going to be like Mr. Terrific. Right. And he just wasn't. I didn't understand why. Like, it just never made the connection to me. Why he wasn't.
So I've read, I think I got Nightfall #1 back in the day. Mm-hmm. I never knew it was connected to like the other universe. Did that happen after issue 1? Did that, how did all these other people get involved? And let's go over the crew. Like Constant Hustle, like I definitely know them. I know Ape Up the Great Devourer. Like how these all people get involved.
So it was always a plan to do a 5-issue miniseries. So when I pitched this to Lawrence, like it was like around 2 years now that I pitched it to Lawrence, it's pretty well known that I originally started with Concrete Comics.
Correct, yeah.
And then I broke off from Concrete Comics and started Wingless Comics. And originally, this story was going, the idea was pitched for Concrete Comics.
Okay.
And so when I broke off, I changed the narrative, changed the idea just a little bit, kept the bare bones, and approached Lawrence about it because I really, really wanted to do it. It's always been a dream to do a crossover comic. My 2 favorite comics, and that doesn't mean they're the best ones I have, but they're wholesome. They mean something to my heart. Is I have the trade of Executioner Song, and I have Mutant Genesis. I love those. Danny, no, all of the issues are not 50 pages. They're 20 some odd. Issue 5 is 28 pages, and issue 4 is 20 something else pages. I don't remember.
They're saying it's 50 pages total, over 50 pages for 4 and 5, which is in this collection, is what they're saying up there.
So I always wanted to do that. So I approached Lawrence, and we had a bunch of conversations because I wanted to do right by his characters. Right. I wanted to do right by Malachi's characters, even though Malachi is obviously affiliated with Wingless Comics. He creates for us, and on and on and on. I just built it that way. Jinx is a character that my brother actually released years and years ago. He had a computer-generated, comic that he had done years and years ago. And I just really wanted to use the character. The rest are Wingless Comics, myself, creations, and I just wanted to do a crossover, but one that mattered, right? Like we are in this community, and this community is super large yet super small. Right. And I've seen people talk about like, oh, we're gonna do this in X amount of years. Oh, it's coming up, and you see all these. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. It's gonna come, and they never ever do anything. Or they got these cute pinups, right? And I didn't want that. I wanted like an actual story that was grounded. And I could tell from multiple, points of view, garner some different audiences, people who maybe not necessarily wanted to, look at or knew who Wingless Comics were, and just kind of go from there, man. I'm just big on story and kind of the dream of like getting that first trade paperback in my hand and saying like from beginning to end, we completed this epic story,
Well, and the benefit is when you're talking indie comics as a whole, there's only so much, the average creator puts out 1, maybe 2 books a year.
Exactly.
Right. So this is a chance if you're writing, the people Avery, the Astonishing or just some of these other characters, you're giving them more screen time than they would normally get in a year, which I think is such a blessing. And, something that I've done all these little anthologies over the year. It's the same kind of process, just different, right? I'm giving you 4 pages to kind of move your stuff forward. Yeah. It's building that and giving them more of their universe, because the more they're in, the more places they're seeing, the more they're loved, right?
Yeah. And I think it's a thing of again, we talk about community, right? So there's like a shared responsibility there, and there's like a shared production and on and on and on, right? So even doing this book, doing justice, that's me, right? So I've got to generate the funds and blah, 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 whatever else. And again, there are some creators that will put their book up on Kickstarter, have 2 pages done or maybe just the cover done, whatever, and they look for it to fund that way. I've never done that. I always wanted my things to be pre-ordered. So I wanted production done, and then, we just fund basically the printing and shipping. Right. So this is a way to not have to bear that burden of production alone and say, hey, we're all going to go in a true form. We're all going to go in. We're all equal partners. These are the percentages. These are the things that we're going to do. These are the responsibilities. Okay, let's move forward.
Yeah, and it's I think it's more important than maybe even, I don't know about maybe you, but the audience knows. Are you familiar with I'm drawing at the name, but there was a huge indie crossover that came out about 20 to 15 years ago. It was done by Dave Ryan. Let me figure out what the name of that is real quick. So what it did is he grabbed as many indie creators as he could and put them together in a thing, but not just like the indie creators, like our Kickstarter creators, but we're talking like Savage Dragon, Shadowhawk, anybody who he could grab, the Ant, all that. The War of the Independents is what it's called. Are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
So so there's about 4 issues out. And each issue, what he realized he had to do very fast is kind of separate the independents. So there's like superheroes and super teams is like issue 1. Issue 2 is like the Gumbies and like the cartoony characters in it. And then issue 3 was supposed to be Latino and Black superhero stuff. And I remember reading it recently, just in a back issue box. It's really hard to find because he never finished it. He still says he's doing issue 4 and it's been around for a while. It's really cool if you can find it in a box somewhere. Yeah. And then here, I'll even bring up the screen real quick just because it's kind of cool to kind of show it off. Anyways, I was scrolling through it, and I was heartbroken of when it got to that community, the Black and Latino characters, how many I couldn't name. And that broke my heart, where some of these independent people, because like you can name a few on this page, right? You can name Madman, Tick, and all that. They've got the second community. That's issue 1. Let me see if I can find it here. And even the Pro from Garth Ennis, the Prime. There's some characters who've been around for a while.
In there. Yeah.
This is that Pamela Anderson character from back in the day up here in the corner.
I remember that one, yeah.
Shadow Flame, these people, a lot of them were part of this. Let me see if I can find it. But then when they got to that issue, I was really sad, not because, it was cool that they were included, but that they haven't stood the test of time. They haven't been around. So that only leads me to believe that those creators got disfranchised and stopped creating those characters.
It is really one of those difficult things. And one of the things that, like when I put on my editing hat, I have to remind people. And I think Chuck Pinot just said this maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago as well. Like, we know our characters, right? Like, we know who they are. No one else does. So you have to take that for granted a little bit until you get out there 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, where you're kind of garnering that. You were scrolling up, and Tony Cottrell's Cosmos was there as well.
Yeah. They're friends. They've been around forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. 12-issue maxi series where he's kind of doing the same of this big crossover that's got all these characters in there and all these things. And I think it's great to do, but we also need to do the work on the back end, like you said, where not getting disenfranchised and not.
One of the biggest issues I think with indie creators as a whole is we want to be our heroes, right?
Yeah.
We want to be the Civil War. We want to get to that level, but we don't want to do the work to get there, the history. Yeah. So we're on issue 3 of our minis. It's not even finished, and we're already in a spin-off or somebody else's book. Yeah. And I get jealous, like as someone who doesn't write superheroes, and that's why I don't write superheroes, because I want to make sure. Yeah. Oh, look at this. Hold on, Travis, make sure you update your pull. We are going to have a new 5-issue indie series on the shelf.
Oh, sweet, man. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. And I will be there when Brian signs to get my first tree signed.
I'm gonna hook something up. Like I said, I got a wedding on Friday, which means I'll probably be hungover Saturday, but maybe Sunday will be the day. I just got to see my travel plans. I'll definitely let you guys know. We'll link up.
Sure. Even if you can just swing by to sign some copies and drop some off, I'll make sure I can be up there. No big deal.
Awesome.
But yeah, so going back to this discussion, we're so desperate. Indie creators who create superheroes are so desperate for that crossover as quickly as possible before their characters' stories even told. What do you think about that?
Which is okay. So I've been. Not only have I been in there, I'm currently in that role, right? So I've said it almost on every podcast I've been on since it happened. I had a conversation with a very, very trusted, very, very good industry friend who's very, very successful, done their own series, couple volumes. So they're good, right? And after issue 2, which was kind of a struggle getting funded on Kickstarter, I was kind of looking back on it, and we were having this conversation, and he basically was like, "Well, hey man, like, don't you think it's too soon to do a crossover?" And my immediate response was, "It's never too early to follow your dreams."
Sure.
Um, but with saying that, you have to have a plan.
Right.
So whereas I consider myself slightly different, is I've had a plan the entire time.
Sure.
I knew where it was going to go. So Justice is only on issue 2. We're going to release issue 3 in April on Kickstarter.
Okay.
So if we're talking about chronology, Justice 1 through 4, actually probably Justice 1 through 6, technically, depending on what story I write for 5 and 6,
Right.
happens before Nightfall.
Right.
Then you have Nightfall, and then the rest of the entire Wingless universe, takes off after that. But again, I had a plan, and it alludes to certain things when you're reading the issue. If you've read Justice issue 1 and 2, you've met Billy, and she's a character, right? And then you see her in Nightfall, and their relationship is different than it is in issue 1 and 2. So it lets you know, like, the small things. Okay, this must happen in a different time period. But you have to have a plan. You can't. A lot of people, and I've seen it, right? They do come out with issue 1, and then crossover with such and such and such and such. All who have only had issue 1s don't know anything about promotion, don't know anything about marketing, aren't really focusing on the storytelling. They just want their characters to look cute together. Right. That was never the point. Nightfall is definitely a series that spins out of everything. Or excuse me, I should say everything spins out of Nightfall. Mm-hmm. Nightfall is a linchpin moment in the Wingless Comics universe. So it makes it easier to introduce someone like Malachi Bailey's Her, right? It's much easier to introduce her now in Nightfall as opposed to, okay, let's start her number 1 with her origin story and her this and her. That's very, it's not even a trope at this point, man. It's kind of hackneyed to me. Thank you very much. I can't enough.
And I would like to get some more backers. If you haven't tried any of these characters, back it for the digital to check out some of these characters. All of them have Kickstarters that run throughout the year that you can check out. Constant Hustle is constantly hustling. Wingless is doing some stuff. We've got these characters have been around for a bit, so let's show them some support and some love. My only upset is there's no FSK in here. I love some FSK stuff.
So you know what? That's coming. So I don't know if you know, but I'm actually going to be taking over Emerald Quest for FSK.
What? No, I did not know that.
Okay. As of issue 5, Mike and the team are doing 1 through 4. When issue 5 picks up, I will be 5 through the end of the series, which we're looking between 20 and 25 issues total.
Okay.
But I will be taking over that. I'm also, what else am I doing? I'm doing something else for FSK. I don't remember. Mike will tell me tomorrow I'm going on Chat and Draw with him tomorrow.
Nice.
I'm also doing some work with Fourth Wall Productions, that's Morgan Iverson and Danny Quick, Ace Blade and Lumberjacks. I'm editing Ace Blade's second story arc. We're going to be doing some more work with them too. Like, again, the communal aspects are actually really, really dope, and they are really, really fun. And I have no doubt that probably with the Justice campaign, I'm going to have some digital tiers that have a lot more FSK and a lot more Fourth Wall in it. I didn't want to step on all of our footprints. Vigilance is launching in just a little while from FSK. Lumberjacks was finishing up. I didn't want to, come and get all of their books in my book. I wanted to, give it a little bit of distance and let them breathe and let us kind of breathe and grow and then come back.
Right. I mean, it's a big take for Wingless, right?
Yeah.
It's a big take going, we're going to go from a single issue stories to we're going to do a major crossover. That's a big thing to take over. And you've been, jump between Nightfall, like all your Kickstarters, Justice and Nightfall, right?
Yes. Yeah, so far. So going into 2022, we're going to obviously expand a little bit more. That's another one of the reasons we wanted to finish up Nightfall, so we can kind of, how the calendar goes. You might have 12 months, but if you're talking about Kickstarter, you don't have 12 months, especially if you want to release 5 or 6 projects. You have maybe 10 months, plus you got to get the right month to do it, plus it's going to take
shortage.
Yeah, on and on and on. Like it's so much going on. So we're going to the plan is to release Justice issue 2, Her issue 1, Immortalis issue 1, Saber Initiative issue 1. That's a pretty full schedule. in itself. So again, that's the plan, and everything is going according to plan right now. But again, we wanted to clear some time because sometimes it is hard to breathe, right? Even though we love these projects, you love your project, I love my project, and we might love each other's projects. How is the public going to react to it, right? How is at one point or another your casual comic book fan who's supporting you or me is going to say, well, I just did the last one. Isn't this the same thing? Or why am I going to do this one? There's got to be some kind of investment. And in order to get that investment, people need time to digest what you're giving them, I think.
Right. Well, and if anybody who's a real comic reader, like a real comic reader, you read your Marvel, DC, your Image, your stuff weekly. You read those first before your Kickstarters.
Yeah.
I know we love our Kickstarters, but it's got to be something special for me to go. That's got to go top of the pile. Those are normally like after I finish my weekly polls, I'll read one or two. I mean, this is just this week for me on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I got Lost in Sea, Affinity Agents, Eclipse, Tart, Century House, and then this big giant trade,
See, yeah.
It's a lot to catch up on. And I have a weekly pull of $50.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, it's crazy. I have a stack over there. They're like, oh man, I'm like, okay, I need just one slow day at work and one slow day at home, and then maybe I can get through a third of it, maybe,
it's trying to figure out all that stuff and their stuff. And I don't know if you know that I am doing an FSK book as well.
No, I did not.
Yeah. I'm writing an issue of Hot Shot. So
So I will say that that's a huge honor.
Yeah.
Because I definitely hit Mike up like, hey man, when we talked about EmeraQuest, I was like, so when you gonna give me some Hot Shot? And he was like, Mike, it's coming, it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? So that's a tremendous honor, man. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Me and Danny are doing one. So Danny's doing one, then I'm doing one. I think we're gonna have a Kickstarter that kind of puts us against each other, trying to sell our single issues. And,
nice.
I created a new character for the universe, which is really cool, that I'm gifting to FSK that they can use for all their stuff.
Nice.
Which is really cool because I don't write superheroes on the regular. I love superheroes, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm doing right now. Like, I have a vision. I want to show like my strengths in other stuff.
Yeah.
Before I show my superhero stuff. So I was like, hey, I got this character. You do so much stuff, Mike Watson, for the community. Can I give back? Yeah. Here's a character. Here's a concept. Can I write this story for you? I don't want anything in return, just some comps,
Yeah.
Can I write this for you? You put it. And he's like, I would be honored. Like, it would really help you, help me. And I think that's what I think the community doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
People are always looking for opportunities, but a lot of times, and you and I were talking about this offline a little bit, there's people who just want to take. They don't want to give to things. Same thing with like just interview. I was like, hey, Brian, I know you. I know sometimes I know that you've had struggles with justice. I think it looks great sometimes, but it's struggle. Can I get you to my audience and let's help?
Yeah.
Just helping somebody else and giving them a hand up and just going, let's get it to somebody who doesn't normally see it. Because as long as we keep screaming to the same people, it's not going to change. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was one of the things about doing a crossover itself, right? One of the ways I pitched it to my partners was like, hey, justice isn't the strongest, the best, and he beats everybody up. Right. And that mentality sometimes that we get, and I understand why we have it, right? Because we, like you said, we are all struggling. We're trying to pull and climb up, right? But sometimes we do that at the expense of others. Just because I'm climbing the rope doesn't mean I need to knock you down or not acknowledge you, right? Or not like I see you slip and I don't, give you a hand up. And so I think that one thing that Mike does, in FSK as a whole, they open up their audience to everyone else.
Right.
And I think that, again, someone like yourself, you open up your audience to someone, to everyone else. I try to do the same with my work with Indie Comics Dispatch, right?
You guys absolutely do, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I separate the two, right? So there's a reason why, when Indie Comics Dispatch Wingless Comics is not on the front page and on and on and on, right? Like, they're two different things. Right. And Indie Comics Dispatch is to highlight everybody in indie comics, right? To give people a platform, to get their press releases out, to get them on podcasts, to get them in front of people who might not normally see them. Whereas Wingless is, for Wingless and for other creators to open our smaller audience up to people. Right. And I think that's something that's supremely necessary in our market, because that's, again, a lot of people talk about the indie community, right? And the indie community, but aren't really part of the indie community any more than they are their books, right?
Well,
They're part of the indie community because they put out books, but not because they're having the conversations with yourself, with Lori and Sarah from Unlikely Heroes
right.
Studios, with with Russell, you know what I mean? Like, who's doing amazingly on Kickstarter, by the way.
Right.
On and on and on. They're not actually really getting into the communal aspects, but wanting to take from those communal aspects.
And what I think, like, people make a mistake is they think that being part of the community, or like if you want to be a leader in the community, you've got to do something. Like you have to do like a Cthulhu Invades Oz or Cthulhu's Hard to Spell. You have to do some anthology or crossover like you're doing. But that's not the case at all. Like I look at someone like Philip Childs, who just runs a small group for anthologies, and lets people know when a new anthologies comes out. Doesn't take a lot of work, but when it comes across his desk, he's looking for them. He just makes sure that the community gets them. That person is invaluable to me, because I, as a writer, always want to write. If the deal's good and everything works out, there's always somebody who I want to partner with, especially on the artist side.
Yeah.
Who, man, if I can try you, I would love to try you out for 5 pages to see if I want to sign you up for my 20.
Exactly.
Right? Like, let's try 5.
Yeah. I mean, if I hadn't, actually, Fabio, I met doing pinups, and we just, struck up a pretty good friendship. But it was the same way. Right? We started with pinups because at the time I wasn't getting anthology invites, or I wasn't aware of them, and that that's
sure.
2 years down the line, it's a completely different story. But there's so much that we can do, and so many. The artist availability just expands for you, and you can expand your ideas. I'm supposed to be writing. And don't yell at me, Marcus, if you see this. I'm supposed to be writing I think 6-page piece for Second Sight for a horror anthology.
Okay.
I think I
zombies
on the paper, and like that's it
right.
so far. But again, 2 years ago I didn't have that opportunity, but now I do. Again, which expands the audience and expands the genre itself. Because when people still look at indie comics, there are a lot of people that are still like, what, you know what I mean? Like, they don't realize that the quality of indie comics is 100% on par with the big two.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's something to definitely note, and you can tell when they're not, right? Mm-hmm. On the few occasions where they're not that quality, like they're not the reality. Yeah. And sometimes when they're not, like, you also have more like sympathy and love for them. Like,
yeah.
Oh man, you didn't even know that you could get Comic Impressions or Comics Wellspring. You went to your local print house that prints, postcards, and you had to print your book. Oh man, like, I'm sorry. Come here, sit down, son.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You get that big brother thing, like, yeah.
You bought it for $6 and you're selling it for $6. Let's work on that.
Right, like, we need to talk. Good job, but like, let's talk.
Right. And I think that's one of the keys on community building, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I love, because I haven't seen anything from Constant Hustle for a little bit. I think they're trying to finish up some projects, right? And get them delivery, which happens to everybody, especially in their situation. If you know the history, you go one path and then things drastically change in this industry some ways, and that changes production. What does that look like?
It's crazy. So I think that I've been fortunate enough. I mean, we still ran into a production delay for Nightfall 3, not production, but printing and shipping delay, right? So the shortage finally caught up with us. So everybody has the digital copies, but we're just finally getting the physicals printed through our 133 art and on and on and on, and it does. You do have to be like pretty adept to change on a dime, right? To say like, oh, this is the thing. Or even so, and you've probably experienced it as well, where, look, I love Justice. Justice is my guy. Obviously, he's my flagship character, on and on. But I also had to acknowledge people really love Caliber, because the moment they saw him, people were like, oh man, who's that guy? Right? So it's like the Goku Vegeta thing. Goku's like the main guy 100%. But when Vegeta made his turn and now he's a hero, but he's still like an asshole, then it's a whole different. It just brings out a whole different side of what you're doing, and you have to be adept and able to change and understand what the audience wants within the stories that you still want to tell.
And I think that's an amazing thing. One of the biggest things that I hate when I talk to someone in the indie community is they're like, Travis, this is such an epic story. I've written 1 through 45. It's all written. It's in my notebook. I've got it all prepared. And when I hear that, all I hear is, you don't give a crap about what the fans say. You're writing for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never going to work out, my friend.
Yeah, right.
Never going to work
Seriously.
out.
Seriously.
um,
Seriously. You have to, I feel like you have to stay true to what you want, but also it's unrealistic. At the
yeah,
end of the day, dude, you're an indie, whoever you are, I
sure.
am, right? Do I have the money to put out 45 issues? No. It might take you, you're an indie, it might take you 45 years because you might only be able to do one issue a year. Like, think about it, logically.
Right.
Also, think about I started with novel writing, right? My first novel is 500 some odd pages.
Right.
Big, beefy book. I like large works. Like, I like writing length. Comics aren't necessarily that. Again, you have to be aware of the audience that you're galvanizing and the story that you're telling. When I first started doing Justice, it was going to be a 6-issue. The first arc was going to be 6 issues, and on and on and on.
Sure.
I spoke to Jason Reeves, who's owner of 133 Art. He does One Nation, Kid Carvers, a bunch of different books. Great guy, and he just looked me dead in the eye. He was like, "Why would you do that?" Like, and he said the thing like, "Hey, man, you're an indie publisher. So think about it. What if you can only do one book a year? Are you gonna make people wait 6 years in order to do one story? Like, that's when you think about it like that, it's kind of crazy. So I feel like you need to be succinct or have a higher production if you want to do something like that. Oh yeah, my first arc is 10 issues. Okay, well then you need to either be succinct and drop it down to 5 or do 2 issues a year. You know what I mean? Something. But again, I think that also goes into planning. You must plan what you're doing. Like, this is a great field to be in, but a lot of times people don't plan anything. I'm just going to go and do it. No, it's still a business. You still got to plan it out, strategize, and make sure you know what you're doing so that you can be successful. So that, look, if I was doing this and there was no social media, 10 people would read my book, right? Until I went to a con or whatever. But you can have 100 and some odd backers. You can have a Russell campaign, 400, 500, 600 backers, you know what I mean? Through this. But you've got to strategize that. You've got to make it worth it for them, for the people who are contributing to you.
Right. Well, and you have to understand, if something isn't, just because it's your opus, like Broke Down in 4 Dead Bodies, I have 2 more arcs to make it a full 12. But, though it resonated really well, I built a good fan base. I knew that I needed to try other things to see if I had stronger fan bases than other things. So I'm doing those. And eventually, hopefully, I'll have the extra expendable income to go back to my passion project and go kind of do that. But my goal is to be a comic writer. I shouldn't get so attached to what I'm writing. I need to move on to the next thing, because that's where you get mistakes, right? Where people, when you think of Claremont, you only think of X-Men, even though he did many, many other arcs.
Yeah.
Right? He did Fantastic Four. He did all sorts of stuff, but you only think of X-Men. And that's because he decided to solidify himself in that. And you've seen he's had a hard time breaking that.
Yeah.
After that, people don't buy stuff like that. But if you look like someone like Brian Michael Bendis, you know him for his Daredevil run, his Ultimate Spider-Man run.
Yeah.
What do you know this guy from? And that's how longevity of staying in this business is you have to be willing to cut ties and move on to that next thing, which is heart-wrenching.
Everyone's not Alan Moore. You know what I mean? Like, Alan Moore can do a thing. I remember when he released, what was it? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like the Black Book or whatever. And he was like, no, it comes with like a cassette tape and the this and the that. But he's also Alan Moore. So he can say, like, only present my thing in this form and fashion because I'm Alan Moore. Right. But, we can name the people that can do that, like, probably on one hand. On the other end of that, you've got to be able to, again, be adept to change and to progress whatever stories you want to tell in a fashion that the public actually wants. Because all that, there's like a lot of advice that comes out. Oh, just write for you. Yes. But at the same time, no. You are writing for you. But if you're writing for marketability, if you're writing to be famous, if you're writing for whatever, all the other reasons that people write, yeah, you want people to read your stuff, but you want to make money off of it. So what does that mean? That means sales. That means that you've got to give people what they want. That's what selling is. So when everybody, just write what you want and it'll be great. Like, that's not necessarily the case. That, there's got to be a plus minus with that and an understanding that, people might not like it, even though you think it's the greatest thing ever. And you've got to move on like kind of past that and
Right.
figure out where you need to be and how you can tell your best stories effectively.
And I think we've seen it too, where a Kickstarter creator has a hit. Their last book was like this crazy, and then their next book is something different, completely different. They're just like, oh, they like me. No, unfortunately, they didn't. Like some of them did, but
Yeah.
a lot of them really resonated with that idea. And
Yeah.
if you don't want to write that idea, that's fine. But understand
Yeah.
what that is. And I think sometimes you even need to do that to yourself if you're doing
Yeah.
this to figure out where you're at, right? We're all looking for that 1,000 fans to
Yeah.
make this happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I look at my math. Anything I do is about 200 backers. Okay, cool. So I've got like 200 fans, maybe 250 if I count conventions.
Yeah.
But how do I get to 300? What does
Yep.
that look like? I'm not looking to get to 500. And just because I get to 500 sometimes, like, you know, I have the big Cthulhu Invades Wonderland was like 650 backers or 550 or something like that. Granted, say Punk was 384, but my average backer is like 275, 280. That's still where I'm at. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people will, in conversation, will be like, I'm at 650. No, man, I was never at 650. Cthulhu and Wizard of Oz are at 650. Travis is not. He's not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is like a sobering, thought. And I was talking earlier, and a lot of people get, I don't know, man, they get hypnotized by that first one, right? Because on that first book, like your aunt, your grandma, your mama, everybody who you know, right, is going to be like, oh, my friend put out a comic. And so you get, oh, man, you pass every goal that you ever thought you were going to have for that piece. And it's great. And then you release book 2, and it's about half of that original thing. And you're thinking like, oh, man, I'm a failure now. No, the market corrected itself.
Right.
A lot of people are willing to support you, whatever it is, one time, right? Like no matter what it is, it's not their genre. They don't care. They'll support you. But when you go to that second time, like you said, you got to look at your fans. And I do. So Wingless does anywhere between 150 to probably like 220, right? And that's like a steady piece.
Right,
so you okay, cool. If I get 200 people at $20 a piece, that's 4K. Okay, cool. And that's enough for this next thing. But again, that's people not planning sometimes, or not really taking into account, like you said, oh, no, Cthulhu had 600, but Tragedy has, 3.
Right, exactly. Well, and then there's this convention people, right?
Yeah.
They love your book, but they're going to wait for you until the next convention that they saw you at last year.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't. You can even have Facebook friended them. They're on your email. You've got all the information to get them, but they want to see you and have you hand that book to them like you did the first time, because there's a mental experience to that.
Yeah.
That they want to relive, which is great and hella annoying. Thank
you. But no, like, just buy the damn book. I'll sign it for you when you bring it. Yeah.
And they buy other people's books. You see their stacks. You're like,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I had people that, like I said, since Black Comics Day had to skip a year, I had people that were at the one previous. So the Black Comics Day previous to this one, all I had was like a 12 or 16 page 0 issue and a couple pinups, man. So I was like a bare bones table, first time out doing my thing. But I got a really good response. Things went really, really well. I had people from that first one, like, oh man, I bought your 0 issue. What do you have now? And I'm like, oh, I got 7 books now. You know what I mean? But they were, like you said, they were waiting. Oh, I think I saw you online. Oh yeah. Oh, I could have got it in, but I wanted to see you here because of that experience. And it is great, and it is annoying, and it is, it's all the things, but it's also all the things that we want, though, right? Like it's all the things that, like, I don't know about you, but my introverted nature springs up really, really high right before I have to go to a convention. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sell. I don't want to be told no. I hate it all. And then you hit the convention floor, and it's like an amazing experience every time, and you have a bunch of fun, and you do all of these things. And I think some of that energy transference for that con group is where I know that's what it was for me when I was going to cons, right? Like you buy something from somebody who you've never heard of before, maybe, or a pin or whatever else. Like, I'm not talking about the big booths. They make money when they make money. But when you're buying from like a real creator that put their heart and soul into whatever it is, man, there's nothing like that experience besides that experience.
especially if you want to be in the industry, right? And you get to have that conversation, you can ask those questions, and that's why I get so frustrated with a creator, when I've sat next to creators. For me, I want to be a writer, so selling at cons is obviously important.
Mhm.
But me being a barker out the front and handing books and putting in people's arm, I do that in my day job in web design. Like that's what I do all day. I
Yeah,
want to be appreciated for my craft and trying to find that balance of I want you to know about my book, but I also don't want to hard sell you. Like I really want you to
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah,
And then when you get to the point when you've been doing this for a couple of years, and it's the most magical point when someone backed your Kickstarter and they come up to you and they're like, "Hey man, I brought this. I saw that you were at this con. I want you to sign this."
yeah.
And you're like, "Who are you?" And
Right?
even more, I have one even better than that, Brian. Some guy's like, "Oh, I've been looking for this book all weekend. I bought this on Comixology," and I'm like, "You're the one?
No,
You gave
not.
me $1.42?"
Yeah, right?
You.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where I don't know that appreciate. It's you being recognized, like you said, being recognized for your work, which is
Right.
dope. So I had an experience. It was crazy. So I was at a con maybe 5 months ago now. It was like in September or something like that. It was in San Diego, another smaller con in San Diego. Just trying it out, seeing okay, let's dip our feet in, see if
Sure.
COVID is over, see if people are coming back. And I'm at the table. I had my buddy with me, and I was selling some stuff, and I was talking to like three people because they just wanted to know about the book, and I'll talk about it any day of the week. And another guy came up. He was like, "Oh yeah, I want that. Like Nightfall. I seen that on my Facebook. You know what I mean? I seen that on my timeline." And so I wasn't really listening, but I heard that part and
Right.
finished up the sale. He's like, "Oh yeah," and he's still talking to my buddy. He's like, "Oh hey, I got to run to a panel real quick, but can I have him?" And I was like, "Yeah." We started talking for just a second or whatever. And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I was just on a podcast a while ago. John Jennings was there, man. He gave me all this great advice and da 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 da." He takes off the mask. It's John Jennings again. John Jennings, like I'm at my table. John Jennings wants Nightfall, right? Because
Yeah.
he's like, "No, I want to read it because I heard the story was dope and I saw this stuff." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, John Jennings wants my book?" You know what I mean? Like it's those moments, right? That like make it real, right? Because this is
Right.
always anybody who's doing this. This has always been a dream in some form or fashion. You don't do comics if it hasn't been a dream. Excuse me. You don't do comics well
Right.
if it hasn't been a dream. There are a lot of people who are getting into comics now because they're like, "Oh, I'm going to sell it off to make a movie." Bro, it doesn't happen that quickly. Stop it, knock it off. But if you're doing comics well and at a high level, you've dreamed of this for a long time. So like you said, when somebody comes and they bought your book on Comixology or John Jennings or somebody who's supported your Kickstarter, that's like the fulfillment of just like the smallest piece of that dream you've had your entire life, which is, again, you can't put a price on that, man. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's as I've seen this and as I built the reputation and built watch the community grow. I mean, the community is completely different than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the people who are in it, who've come and gone, who tried, who were big hustlers, but they couldn't fulfill one time because of various reasons that may not even been their fault. They
Hmm.
finally got out, and that was just so exhausting that you're just like the thought of doing an issue 2 or 3 is just exhausting. They couldn't cut it. And then the people, I've noticed that the people stick around a few ones. One, they read something beyond what they write.
Hmm.
Like they read something in the mainstream, and and mainstream is a very, very small word. It could be vault, it could be, but they go into a comic store and they understand what that relationship is.
Yeah.
Right. Those are, I see those are people who stick around. Two, the people who are willing and listening and want to be part and help other people grow.
Hmm.
That's also a very, very key. They stop and they're like, you know what, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Is there anything I have that you don't to help you get to that next level? Because I know based on who you are that that's going to help me down
Yeah.
the road, even if it doesn't help me today.
Yeah.
And the third people is just they would do it even if they didn't make money. If every Kickstarter failed, that's not going to discourage them. They're just going to find a way to repackage it until they make it work.
Yeah.
And that's the third type. And I love that. And I think, sometimes we always feel we're that third one, but most of the time we're the first and second.
Yeah. It's weird the impact that sometimes, and again, I know that you probably have 3 times the amount I do, right? But you get some random illustrator or a random colorist, or you're at a convention and you get some random kid who's like, "Oh, I want to get in the comics, but I don't know what I'm doing." Like, some 16-year-old kid, and you're like, "Hey, man, here's my email address.
Right.
If you have any questions, hit me up." And those are the things that actually matter. And again, build this community and solidify what you're doing, right? Like as a person, when people are coming to you and you're giving them actionable advice, then you know what I mean? Like you're in the right place.
Yeah.
You're where you want to be. And that's part of the passion, right? Part of the passion has got to be spreading your gift, whatever it may be, with other people. Like writing is writing, right? But storytelling is different. And storytelling comes in so many forms. And that goes into mentorship and on and on and on and all these other areas that we have to dip into as independent creators, again, which are ultimately very, very fulfilling.
Right. Yeah. And the amount you learn from different, I've learned just, when I first started this, I was like, all right, I need to get as much advice from writers as possible. But some of my best advice has been from artists going, hey, the way you write a panel is great, but if you just switch a couple of these things around, it's going to flow better because your eye goes this way. How can you write the panel slightly differently to make people feel better about it, to get the tension? And that stuff, and only an artist can teach you that and like physically show it. The writer's just like, hey, write what you know. Here's your beats. Something, a page flip, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
What does that look? Hey, Neff. Neff is also a great creator. Check out this guy. Check out Nightfall. I think he should be on your show. Let me bring it. Is it up? No, it's not up. I think he should be on your show. He does a great book. This is a big crossover on Kickstarter. Lots of indie books in here. You want to give a quick pitch for Neff?
So Nightfall, our heroes from the Content Hustle universe and the Wingless universe come together because the evil wizard Merlin is trying to resurrect Apep, the ancient Egyptian serpent god that will destroy the world. So our heroes run afoul of each other in issues 1 and 2, and we rush to a pretty dramatic conclusion in issues 3, 4, and 5 as our heroes try to avoid the end of the world as we know it.
Nice. I think that's a good pitch. Yeah. Neff runs a Global Frequency over on Kickstarter, over on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of Indiegogo, but definitely check it out, Neff, if you haven't. Let me share that link for you. He's a big supporter of the community, does some great stuff. I think you need to definitely see your book. Maybe you guys can, he's got 16 days left. Maybe you have a spot, Neff. Maybe you can message him and see if we can get him on.
I would appreciate it. Inbox me, hit me up, or I will hit you up. I really appreciate it.
All right, Neff says we'd love to have him on. That sounds so cool. Hit us up on Twitter. So before we wrap up, I want to hear what the 2020, since we're only 3 months in, and really just started month 3, what's the Wingless plan for the year?
A little bit of insanity and a lot of craziness. So the 2020 plan is we are going to release, well, we already are. We're releasing Nightfall, and that is our February release. Obviously, going into March, we will be back on Kickstarter in April with Justice.
Okay.
Next on the list, which should be late spring, I guess, early summer, around end of May, early June, should be her number 1 from Malachi Bailey in Wingless Comics. We are still figuring out the dates between Saber Initiative and Immortalis, but both of them should be out before third quarter. We're going to rest for fourth quarter and be back at it again. There are also some secret projects that I can't completely talk about, but I have something in the works with 133 Art and Jason Reeves that's slightly different than comics, but also tangentially connected to them.
Right.
And again, we plan to keep this kind of production schedule going moving into the future. 2023, you'll see the release of likely 2 Justice books per year starting then, and one of all the other titles as we move forward.
Right. And you only write Nightfall and Justice, right? Some other people open the other stuff.
Yes. So Malachi Bailey writes her.
So Neff has the 7th and the 16th.
Let me look at my calendar real quick because I suck at dates. Oh, and times, as Travis knows.
Yeah, he's not East Coast like us. Just
7.
He ain't East Coast like us.
Right.
He's West Coast.
3/7 is perfect for me.
All right. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah. Wingless Independent.
Neff, message him on Twitter.
Yeah. Can I drop my? Can I comment? I can't comment. What is Neff's Twitter handle? I'm going to add it right now while we're on, so that I can find him. Is it the same?
It myself. I think it's Global Frequency, but let me make sure. Yeah, it's Global Freak.
Global
Freak. Here, I got it right here. I'm going to post it in the chat for everybody.
Thank
He
you.
probably already did it. Yep.
Okay, got it. Got it.
You're my guy. Will do, Big T. Awesome. Yeah, I think this is right up your alley. He loves. He's always looking. Neff and I talk privately about looking for new superheroes, so I think he'd be really interested in seeing this. And Neff, a lot of these guys are. Neff is a relatively new creator. He's only been since like 2020. So I think a lot of these characters he may have missed because a lot of these are 1918 characters.
Yeah.
So he may have missed those Kickstarters and not know, which is a great take.
Awesome. That's awesome. I look forward to it, man. I look forward to hitting you up. I'll inbox you after this is over, and we'll talk.
So couple more things. So that's your schedule for them, and not all of them are written by you, correct?
No. Yeah. So her is Malachi. So Wingless Comics is a creator-owned house. So while we publish, we obviously don't take ownership of those characters.
Right.
So her is Malachi Bailey's heroine, and she spins out of he's written 2 novels, and so the character spins out of those 2 novels.
Awesome.
And this is her. She's had her comic debut with Wingless Comics in her 0 issue, and now moving forward. J.L. Johnson, who writes Ennead, who will be on Kickstarter in March, is writing the Saber Initiative for us, which is more of a ground level, street level type book that spirals out of the events of Nightfall. So we get to kind of see some of the fallout and certain things that are happening in the world because of that. And Brett Hillisham of Indie Comics Dispatch is actually writing Immortalis. So Immortalis 0 actually launched with Justice number 3. So you can see obviously the 0 issue for that, and he'll be heading up that team.
Nice. So the Constant Hustle stuff, are they? Is this like they go through a portal and go back to their own universes, or is it kind of like the Savage Dragon, Spawn, like they're just kind of there, like if we need them type of thing?
So it originally started with they're just kind of there. And so that's how I wrote the narrative for Nightfall, because I was on with Lower yesterday with Unlikely Heroes.
Yeah.
And I was telling her how much I hate like that boom tube action, like, oh man, who's gonna save us? And then like poof, and then Superman comes out. Like it's so lame. I wanted to do some real storytelling. So Avery's history as we started Nightfall was very, very much linked to the Wingless universe's history. Right. And actually Lawrence and I just recently inked a deal to where we're going to joint publish Avery. And so she is actually a legit canon part of the Wingless universe now. Nice. So all her history, it's not redone, but all her history and the ideas the concepts that I introduced in Nightfall are part of her history now. So moving forward, we'll be, producing that together. So also, yeah, Avery is going before the end of the year, and we're still nailing down the date for that. As we produce it, but Avery will also be launching from Wingless Comics.
And will it be Wingless Comics exclusive, or will it be co-branded?
Co-branded. It will definitely be co-branded.
And that stuff works. I mean, look at, I remember when Angela moved over to Marvel, and I was like, there's no way that this works. And they just kind of barely mention it. And you're like, you know what? I can just swing with it. Like,
I feel like at least with that one, right? Like less is more.
Right.
Don't get into the minutia of it. Like it just is what it is, and keep moving. So what we found and what I pitched the entire time, I mean, from the beginning of the crossover, is I really wanted Avery in the Wingless Comics universe. I love how her history bounces off some of the other characters and some of the ideas I introduced. So I've been pitching that to Lawrence for about a year and a half now. Like, come on, man, like just publish, so that does nothing to Constant Hustle as an entity itself. But again, in universe publishing, Avery is part of Wingless as far as that goes. And I think that enhances the narrative somewhat and does a few pretty cool things considering.
Yeah. All right. So what other, before we go through Nightfall one more time with the pitch, what are the other projects non-Wingless that you got coming out?
Ooh,
2022?
and
that you
So
can tell us?
right, it's hard to say non-wingless because everything is attached to wingless, but only because Wingless Comics is a division of Wingless Entertainment. So I try to run everything through there because it makes it easier for me,
Sure.
frankly. Um, but hopefully before the end of this year is up, I do have a steampunk cartoon pitch that I'm working on. It's called Magnificent, and it's I don't like calling it an anime because if you call Avatar an anime, people lose their minds about it. But it's in the Avatar vein and style and look. So hopefully we'll be able to get that off the ground. We're looking at doing a 1 minute teaser again for proof of concept and moving that kind of forward. I'm editing a couple prose novels right now. I'm supposed to be in an anthology with Second Sight. I might be in another anthology with Charlie McElvey.
Okay.
He's supposed to send some paperwork soon. So a couple things on the table.
Nice.
Trying to pick up work, kind of wherever I am, wherever I can. Like I said, Ace Blade, editing for Ace Blade. So I'm really looking forward to that because I think Ace Blade is a really, really good comic. I think it had some rough edges. And I've been thankful to be able to kind of smooth those out a little bit. Oh, nice. Oh, I appreciate that, man. It's I really do. You hit all the points that I'm trying to hit, so I'm glad.
You're big. You've already got a fan,
right? Yeah. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, why don't you give us the pitch one more time before we sign off here?
Yeah, so Nightfall, in case you missed it, Nightfall is a crossover between Wingless Comics and Constant Hustle Comics. Basically, our heroes, Justice, Avery, Lux, Jinx, Caliburn, and her come together because Merlin, who in our universe is an evil wizard, is trying to resurrect the ancient Egyptian serpent god Apep, who is destined to devour the world. So our heroes run afoul of each other, and they have to come together in order to stop the ending of the world as we know it.
Nice. Awesome. And this wraps it up, right? This is a
this is the end. This is issue 4 and 5. So you're going to get issue 4 and 5 at the same time. This is the end of the 5-part miniseries. And it sets the stage really, as I've said, kind of or alluded to, it sets the stage for what comes next in the Wingless Comics universe. You're going to see where people go if they survive, right, and all of those great things as we go into the 2022 year of comics for us.
And Nev, just because you're going to ask, 1, 2, and 3 are add-ons, so they're just not on the pledge, but they're on add-ons, so you can get them in the add-on section because I know you're going to ask that. Well, Brian, it's been awesome to have you on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. One, and I don't say this lightly, I appreciate the platform, right? Like we're talking about this community stuff. You and I had a call earlier, last week, right?
Sure,
over unrelated matters. But it's good to be able to even do that part of it, right? Something happens or something goes down or we talk about something or it's a joke. And because we're a community, right, we can reach out to each other and you can just, hey, man, let me buzz you real quick. And then that leads to something like this. That leads to like, okay, hey, let's go on and let's talk. And we got some ideas that we share. You know what I mean? Like some pretty awesome things.
And I don't know if you know, I even invited him out to the show when it was the Monday, when we were doing it on Monday. I invited him. I was like, hey, if you're available, you're more than welcome.
Yeah. So like I said, I really appreciate it.
I agree, and I appreciate that too. And I think that that's the key to any of these things. If you make a mistake in the community, because I made a mistake the other day, I didn't mean to, but I know that my reputation stands before me. Like everything I've done prior does affect you. People don't think about that, right? Yeah. They make a mistake and then they double down, then they triple down, and then they like smush it to the ground. Yeah. And I know everyone kind of doubles down at first, right? Like, you get that masculine up if you're a man, not to insult women out there, but you're masculine. But, when you're willing to go, all right, I see it. I've talked to others. I've talked to my crew. What is that stuff? Because your reputation will protect you in the long run. So if this isn't a habit, if it becomes a habit, then there's a problem that needs to be further addressed. But it's not.
And introspection says a lot, right? Because, and we've gone through, I think it's been highlighted in the last 4 to 6 years, right? That introspection for a lot of people doesn't matter. They'll say something or do something, and they're like, just live with it, as opposed to
Right.
being introspective enough to go like, oh, maybe that was messed up.
Right.
That maybe I was a little wrong, and let me, redress whatever I didn't mean to do.
Right.
So I think that part is important as well. The introspective piece, and it speaks a lot to who you are, right?
Sure.
To be introspective enough to say, oh, okay, like I said, talk to some other people. Oh, I was wrong. Oh, okay. Oops.
Right.
Here it is. Because sometimes, and a lot of times, it's that easy. Oops. Sorry.
Right.
Right. Like,
Right.
my bad.
Right. Yeah, these things don't define you, and then that even goes further to like Kickstarter. I've seen so many people fail to fulfill, and then finally figured out and fulfill, and they launch their next project, and it's fine. Like just make it right.
Yeah,
and you're gonna be fine, right? The problem is when you don't make it right and you make excuses and you double down. That's when it becomes not okay.
we spoke about someone who's gone through that, and I'm not gonna. That's not a judgment or anything else.
Sure.
He went through the period of like, no, bro, you messed up big time, and then you didn't try to make it right, and you wanted just everybody to forget about it,
right.
As opposed to saying like, nah, man, I fucked up. I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. Right. But again, eventually he overcame that, or at least it looks that way in a lot of ways. So
sure, yeah, but you're only you can never again using that person, you still see him get upset when like somebody comes up. Well, you made a lot of mistakes and you haven't fixed them all yet, and you're never going to make everyone happy. You can only make the new people not upset, and eventually, as you continue to do right, that person who's still mad, they have to go, what am I mad about? Like, look at all these things that he's done. Like, I just need to move on, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's all you can hope for,
Sometimes people forget to be adults because of all social media, but most, not all people deep down just want to enjoy stuff, have fun. Travis hangs out with good people. I do.
Amen to that. Like on all levels, it's completely true, but I feel like we persevere, you know what I mean? Like, good ones out, or whatever you want to say,
Right. Our intentions are always to do better, to create good things, and to put good things in the world. And if it's not, and those are the people who I want to hang out with. So I'm going to resonate to them every time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's get off of this. Let's do my outro, and I want to hang out, and I got a couple questions for off air, but let's do that. So I'm going to remove you. Do you want to say where they can contact you?
I want to say thank you again, Travis, for having this. We are Wingless Comics everywhere. So Wingless Comics on Facebook, Wingless Comics on Instagram. We're actually Wingless Entertainment on Twitter. www.winglessent.com is the website. Again, if you Google Wingless Comics, we're the only one. You'll find us in case you get lost. And so thank you guys again. Nightfall is live. I appreciate everything.
Do you want to give a quick pitch to Indie Comics Dispatch?
No, because I hate Brett. No.
That is the well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that makes the most sense of everything you've said here. The guy is just, you remember when he faked COVID and just like, like it was ridiculous.
Right. Oh, my voice is out.
I have a headache because of COVID. Whatever.
No, honestly, I will say Brett is a great guy. He was actually my first interview in the indie comic space, so I really appreciate that. Indie Comics Dispatch, I'm a part of Indie Comics Dispatch. Indie Comics Dispatch is a nonprofit company that literally reviews, promotes, and cherishes indie comics of all formats, of all creeds and colors. You can submit your projects for review. You can send your press releases. Indie Comics Dispatch will look over them all. Obviously, all books can't be reviewed, but we try our best to get to them as quickly as we can. Being a comic creator myself, I decline reviewing books because I don't think it's necessarily fair for me as an indie to judge other indies. But they have a strategized review core that does that, and we're always open to new things. They're also taking submissions, I think, for one more day for Tales from the Dispatch number 3. So if you guys have something out there, throw it in there. You got one more day.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to do the outro. I'm going to remove you for a minute to pitch a couple of things that are coming out for Orange Cone, and then I'll talk to you in the background.
All right, I'll be here, sir.
All right. Well, that was it. Like I said, this is not what I normally do. We have the creators hang out with a whole bunch of people, but I've seen Brian hustle, and when I see someone hustle who I've never had on, like I wanted to get the time and opportunity to meet Brian. Hopefully, you guys got to meet him with me. The internet went out for just a second. I think we're back. All right, cool. He's a great creator of stuff. Orange Cone. So we've got Tales of the Collective. That's going to be launching sometime this week, either Friday or Monday. So be on the lookout for that. That is Orange Cone, a side project, kind of collaboration, kind of like Wingless and Constant Hustle. We're helping the comic store Tales of the Collective get their stuff out there. We've got some cool stories in that. One of them being an Orange Cone project, Pop Van Winkle. My wife is in Cthulhu is hard to spell too. 3. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you back Russell's book and check that out. And then on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, we're launching Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. I know a lot of you people are waiting on that. We'll have that pre-launch page up very, very soon. I just got to send some more of these Granite State Punks out. But that's it, man. Granite State Punks at the printer. Should get that in 2 weeks and get that shipped out to you guys like I always do. Thank you guys for being here. Live free or die. Be awesome. Create comics. I will see you guys soon. And again, I haven't mastered when to hit the end broadcast thing. So now you're